And hello, everybody. We have a screencast. This is for the 1st of February, and this screencast can be used for the next couple of days to do the assignment. That is the time period between the war. And you see here a concept map, and you'll be filling out this concept map, but you're actually going to use the chart, social and cultural changes, and I need you to put 5 changes on there. This is an assignment that is due on Wednesday afternoon. So we'll be doing this over the next 2 or 3 days in class, and you should be taking notes after class or after you watch the screencast. You can, of course, use the text. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to be looking at the social changes after World War I, scientific discoveries, literature reflects new perspectives, modern art and architecture in your textbook or in the screencast, and complete the chart and identify the details. So you have a little bit of reading or a little bit of watching to do, or a little bit of looking at the notes. So, here are your questions you also have to answer, and you can answer these in a sentence. They're pretty much basic questions that we'll go over. Identify cause and effects, and you need to identify the technological innovations and how they affected the Western world. We're talking about countries that fought the war in Europe, excluding Russia. Make generalizations of how flappers symbolized women's emancipation in the Jazz Age. And there are some pictures of flappers and their influence on how women are perceived greatly changed the perception in the West with their style, with their willingness to forego normal conventions like drinking alcohol openly. The fashion they wore shows a lot more than fashions had shown in the earlier parts of the 20th century and the 19th century. And then, why did Curie's and Einstein's theories unsettle the general public? Now, we're not going to do all these questions in this cast today, or it would take an hour, but we will be hitting the highlights. I have notes here, and I'm just going to hit the highlights. You need to look at these. These are taken directly from the textbook. And the time period between World War I and World War II really changed the social, economic, cultural values that the Western world had. It's known also as the Roaring 20's, and technology and just the relief that this horrible war had ended led to many social changes, and one aspect of it is that people wanted to just have a good time and live life to its fullest, particularly in the United States and Western Europe. So what were some of the changes? Automobiles become abundant, and this leads to freedom of movement. People also were unchaperoned, and that led to some changes in behaviors among individuals and groups. You had the telephone, connected the world and people to each other. Jazz, and here's a picture of a jazz club in New York City, and how it reflected the change and also pushed the change. Media reflects change, and sometimes it pushes change, and there's a big argument on whether it should push the change in society, but it certainly does. Jazz was a new music style, something totally unheard in the world before, and it takes over the culture, particularly in the United States, and then the United States and Canada, and then it spread to Europe. These are flappers in England on their way for a night of fun on the jazz club. And again, you can see the styles, and then look at the styles that were worn in the earlier part of the 20th century and the 19th century. So flappers, these were young women who did not accept the society's role. They cut their hair instead of having long hair, which had always been considered the way women wear their hair. They would wear it in bob cuts. They revealed their arms, their legs. They used a lot of makeup, jewelry, and they started the custom of women shaving their legs and under their arms, which up to then had not really ever been done in our society. There are political changes and another cultural change, and this is the first female governor in the United States from the state of Texas. She is Miriam Ferguson, and you can tell she also has pictures where she dresses a little bit like a flapper. And so the first woman governor. There were labor-saving devices such as washing machines, vacuum cleaners, canned goods, and these affected women very much so because these were areas of the domestic life, and women were traditionally very much in charge of the home, managing the home, and taking care of the home. Well, what did this give women time to do? They got involved in greater society. They got involved in sports, the arts, and the workforce. This is Babe Zidrickson-Zaharis. She is an amazing athlete. She was a star athlete in baseball, track and field, basketball, and golf. She was a professional golfer, and she won 2 gold medals in the 1932 Olympics. And she is a tremendous heroine in athletics. Another person who you may have heard of is Amelia Earhart. And again, she wore her hair in a very short cut. She was the first woman to fly across the Atlantic and was an advocate for women's rights. We learned that women had been leading the movement for temperance in the country, and in this period, prohibition was passed. This is a picture of people having a party on the last day that you can legally have a drink in a public place. Prohibition really restricted the manufacture and sale of alcohol. You could drink it if you had it, but you couldn't manufacture it or sell it, and so people stocked up and they had one last wild party. And women led the movement, although these women were drinkers, but women had been a large part in the prohibition movement. Oops, went the wrong way. So you can see, and one of the reasons was alcohol abuse, which really affected women very badly, had been pushed by women. So you have different points of view. Society's changing. You have the flappers on one hand, and they're, let's wear makeup, let's wear jewelry, let's wear short skirts, and show fancy hats and have fun and dance and live it up and drink. And then you have people who had been affected by the societal effects of alcoholism, which was rampant in the United States in this time period, and they are leading the movement against prohibition. So that was some of the morality. This was a constitutional amendment. Along with the right to vote, you have the banning of alcohol, which is kind of two different things. Increased freedom and liberty on the one hand, and yet a restriction of something that had been going on in the world and was still going to go on in the world, and limiting people to if they could get alcohol, which led to its own problems, including a rash of crime and illegality. Religious fervor was a reaction to the flappers and the freedom and the emancipation of the soul, you could say, of the Roaring 20s. Institutional religious conservatism rose as a force, and it's still present to this day. And you can see, on one hand, a lot of times a conflict between forces of stability in society, and it's often showed by religion and maintaining the norms and traditions that go on at this time, and then change, freedom, excitement, let's try this, let's do that, let's change society, which is really typified very well by jazz and the flappers. So that's it for today. Have a great day, and I'll see you in meetings, and if you have any questions, you know you can reach me in Google Hangouts. Bye-bye.